everyone and welcome back to yet another Getting Stuff Painted, my bi-weekly update, give or take, especially in this case, of the various miniatures I've been painting for the games we cover here on the channel. And it hasn't been long at all since the last one. I've been getting on with my painting, experimenting a lot with the new contrast paint variety that Games Workshop brought out, so we'll talk about that again today. There's been a lot of new colours used, and like last time I'm going to get the name of these new colours wrong because I'm so used to the old colours, but we'll talk about them in general. And Games Workshop actually brought out a very handy kind of like sheet showing every new shade and contrast colour they released recently. So I'll talk about the colours in general, and if you can find that, it's on the Warhammer community page. You'll be able to match up roughly with what I'm showing and or saying, because I'm not going to remember the names, especially with the new ones. But either way, we're going to talk about that. A little bit of talking about the other base paint as well, available for working with contrast if you stick with just Citadel stuff, and see how that compares. But we have a few surprises in here, I think. Maybe we have some scenery for a start, which is always a surprise if I paint scenery. We have some Blood Bowl, we have some Fallout Wasteland Warfare, we have some third-party Crisis Protocol, and then we have a chunk of Batman miniature game, of course, working through those releases that were unboxed recently. So without further ado, we will work our way from left to right, as usual. So from the Skaven Blood Bowl team, we have the other Gutter Runner. I did a test paint on a Gutter Runner. Well, this is very in shadow, isn't it? My camera, oh, there we go. But it's not in focus quite yet. I did a test paint of one of the Gutter Runners, I think they're Gutter Runners, that came in the box a while back, because I was just trying out that new Tesseract Glow paint. In this case, I didn't. I just wanted to get the other Gutter Runner painted. I felt like painting something a bit different, so I was like, I haven't done any Blood Bowl for a while, so why not? But rather than use the Tesseract Glow for the green parts, I used Striking Scorpion Green, I think it is, which is the brightest of the new contrast greens. Definitely does not match up with the original, but hey, you kind of want to tell them apart anyway. And I think it's a better choice for that, because the other one is more for an unnatural glow rather than a cloth colour. So I think I just used Black Templar for this, because I used Black Templar on the other one. Same with Blood Angel's Red there, so I didn't use any of the new contrast paints on that. Volp's Pink for his tail and whatnot. The only new colour was the greens, which is why I'm showing them off, but other than that, exactly the same as the other one was painted. Actually noticing, I think the paint has actually thinned like just too much right there. It's a little bit too bright. Let me just pull it behind the camera here for a second. Yeah, it's pulled a little bit too much. It needs to be like it having an edge highlight like that is fine, I suppose, but it's a bit too white compared to his cape. You know what, let's do the scenery at the same time as this as well, just to get the scenery out of the way. There isn't much to talk about. These are two bits of scatter terrain by Games Workshop. At least I think this one is. It might also be the front of like one of those really old Razorback designs for Space Marines. But this was part of just like a generic terrain pack. I've been doing some cleaning out cupboards and throwing stuff out and whatnot, and I've found stuff like this, little bags of scatter terrain, and I was like, this is going to be easy enough to paint. Base coat, lead belcher over the whole thing, some army paint or rust, dry brushed onto sections of it, it's hard to say, and then some aggressor shade over the top to give it that worn kind of used metal look. Super simple, super easy, super quick. Done in like 10 minutes if you don't include waiting for the base coat to dry in the silver. So super easy. Basically did exactly the same thing with this as well. Going to just use it as a generic bit of like roadblock terrain. I'm not sure if it's from the same scatter pack as that is. Like I say, it could be, because it's got this little bit here, so it looks to me like it was meant to slot into the front of a tank. But I'm not sure. If you know what 40k terrain set this is from, by all means point out, because I'm pretty sure that's what it's from. It has the look of 40k terrain, but I don't remember. But I found them and I was like, these, like having little bits of scatter terrain like that just make tables look nicer. Those are super quick and easy to do because it's just silver. So despite hating scenery, I got them done. So let's move on to Wasteland Warfare. We have the super mutant known as Hammer, and then we have Yes Man, the other Securitron. I showed off the first Securitron last time. Basically did the exact same thing with Yes Man, with the exception that he is upright and his base didn't snap when assembling him, so I didn't have to just turn him into an objective marker instead. So this is the new Usherman. Again, I keep on forgetting that name. The new healthy, lively, deep blue. There isn't the dark one. So that's mostly what's on offer here. Modifius actually doing an official painting guide video on how to paint Securitron, so I sort of followed that a little bit, although obviously using contrast paints instead of normal paints. So once that was on, it is streaky in places, even though it's one of the newer ones, unfortunately, especially at the back here, I think. But once that was on, a little bit of dry brushing with Lead Belcher Silver, a little bit of dry brushing with the Army Painter Rust, especially on the silver sections like the arms and whatnot, and inside the crevices, make it look aged. Normal paints used just to pick out the buttons, the greens and reds and whatnot. And the base is Snakebite Leather, Silicanum Grey. Is that Striking Scorpion green? That's one of the new greens again, but I don't remember if it's the Striking Scorpion one that I've just toned down with a wash, because obviously it's not nearly as bright as this. Or if it's a different one. I think it's a different one, but I don't remember the name of it, because like I mentioned last time, there's like 3 new greens in contrast to go along with Warp Lightning and Militarum. So I don't remember the name offhand, but I'm pretty sure it's definitely one of the new ones. Definitely. But I don't think it's Striking Scorpion because it doesn't look deep enough. But that could just be because I watered it down for the wash. I don't quite remember. The face is just like applying normal black paint and then just gently stroke it and hope that it picks out the details of Yes Man's face. Kind of worked. Didn't look as good as the official paint job obviously, but it kind of worked. It looks okay. And this is obviously for at some point the Wasteland Warfare playthrough. Speaking of which, Hammer is apparently, because I had to ask my Twitch chat who Hammer was when I posted a picture of this, and I was like, I don't know who this super mutant is. Apparently he just controls a location in Fallout 4, he's just a named super mutant you can run into, and apparently Modifius liked him enough to make a miniature of him. He's using a combination sledgehammer and rocket launcher, so that's pretty cool, all said and done. So I'm not surprised they wanted to make him into an actual miniature, but yeah, I have no memory of ever meeting this guy in Fallout 4. But apparently he's in there. I don't remember quite where, but he is in there. I did the usual super mutant thing. This is Militarum Green, the old green contrast paint for his skin tone. This is from the 2017 range, which is awful for contrast paints. But I persisted, and it was mostly Lead Belcher Silver, and then the Army Painter Rust, which is just... I've been using that more and more recently after discovering how good the effect is that it gives you. So this is a lot of the Army Painter... I think it's called Mild Rust, or Dry Rust. It's very orange. They do 2, and one of them's kind of brownish and one of them's kind of orange. It's the orange one. And if you do that just really gently on top of silver, it gives it that perfect aged, rusted look that I really like. And this is the first super mutant I've tried it with it to that extreme, and I really like how it turned out. So another super mutant for the pile to turn up either as Hammer or just a generic guy at some point in the future. I like how he turned out more so than the Securitron, to be honest. So last time I showed off a third-party Scarlet Witch that I got, and I used some of the new contrast paint colours for. At the same time, I picked up another Iron Man just because I kind of liked the pose. I didn't even realise until it arrived, like, this pose is basically identical to the emergency suit one that comes with the Hulkbuster official mini. It's almost literally the exact same pose, slightly different proportions, slightly different base, but it's basically that, so it's not exactly super different, but if nothing else, it let me test out the Bal Red new contrast paint again, which we're going to talk about a lot here because I used it a ton over on this end of things. So I used Bal Red for the red parts of his metal, I was going to say skin. Still Nazrag Yellow for the golden parts. I'm not 100% convinced that's the best choice. In the past, like before I just started using Nazrag Yellow, I just used to use the old Citadel gold paints. Gehenna Gold and Balzar Gold, I think, or something the other one's called, I don't quite remember. I never liked the effect on either of those two either, so I'm kind of up in the air with what I prefer the most. And then there's a little bit of Calgar Blue. Oh, and one of the new contrast paints actually that looks like Calgar Blue. What was it called? It's not the Usherman Blue, it's... Oh, it's not Storm Fiend either, that's the kind of darker crystally blue. There's another new blue, and it's like Calgar, the Citadel normal paint. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. Oh, that's going to bug me. I'm sorry. I really should have the new paints next to me when I talk about them. There's a new light blue contrast, and I used that, and it's pretty good. It's not super thin. I also used it to highlight the rocks to look like he's really blasting off like Team Rocket. But it was mostly just to experiment. That's why I picked up a third-party sculpt of a character I've obviously already got. But I was like, hey, it's a perfect opportunity to test out some new painting effects, some new colours, and sometimes I want to stand in, or like Iron Man on both sides, that's now an available option. And again, this is a perfect example of third-party sculpts coming a long way. If you look back in the series quite a ways, but like a while back, I did pick up a 3D printed Iron Man before. He's kind of like taking off with a big plume of smoke under him. Pretty cool pose. But it's very early on in the 3D printing era and on a cheap 3D printer. So it's all bubbly, it's all textured, you can see the individual lines of each layer of it being built up. These new ones though are great. Like so much more detail. In fact, I have one here I ordered. It's low priority because it's not an officially represented character in the game yet, but I can show you the kind of quality they come in prior to painting. Got this over here, and you probably won't recognize him if you're only familiar with the cinematic universe, but we just do this like this, bring this in here. This is Gore the God Butcher as he appears in the very excellent comic on which Love and Thunder is very loosely based. So they did a 3D print of how he appears in the comics. The comic is really good, incidentally. So that is the kind of quality you're getting. You don't see mold lines. You do have to do some cleanup, and it is plastic that you could very easily snap. I don't know, like there's a little bit of trim under his arm there if that's getting picked up. But compare that to the older 3D printers, the lesser quality style, the ones that don't use resin. It's so much better. I have another one here actually. Hang on, here we go, right here. Again, another not officially represented character, but we have rocks here, we have a horse with too many legs, and we have an Odin. I haven't assembled this yet, but he kind of sits on there, and then I think it's like, he's kind of like that. I expect them to officially add Odin at some point, so this is just a cool looking alternative sculpt that I decided to pick up. And again, the detail is not the same quality as getting an official miniature, obviously, but it's not a million miles away, especially once you apply paint. Like, that doesn't look any different, really, to any official Crisis Protocol mini I've painted, the Iron Man there. So the quality is there, and it'll match your paint style or paint quality as well, pretty much spot on, whether it's third party or official. Although, as a reminder, support official, and then once you have the official one, branch out into third-party sculpts if you just want something fancy. So we're into the final chunk, and that is Batman miniature game, but I want to quickly talk about these because you will already have seen these previously in this series. These are Joker's victims from the 3 Jokers wave. They're a horde, and you can actually have 12 of them in total, so I found another pack of them quite cheap, and I wanted an excuse to use some of the new contrast paints. So I picked them up, and it's the purple I talked about last time, but I got the name wrong. I think it's called Luxian purple. I think I called it Lebanon purple last time, which is not correct. It's Luxian purple, which is a very nice bright purple, so that's what I used. And I also used the other base coat for these, which is called Wraithbone, I believe, instead of Grey Seer. The difference being that it's a much more cream coloured. It basically looks like Screaming Violet, if you remember that old Citadel paint. It's that colour. So it makes warm colours warmer. My experiment with this meant that it's not a direct comparison for a start, but my feeling is that the Wraithbone definitely helps warm colours, but it does not like darker shades, darker colours at all. There isn't many parts of these that I can use to explore that, especially because I've gone over the bases with a normal paint afterwards. But the grey that I use for the base, Basilicanum Grey, and the Black Templar for the boots, or that might have been Black Legion this time, either way, like, it didn't look as nice, didn't look as thick, but the warmer colours, like this warm Luxian purple, if a purple can indeed be called warm, it looks so much better. And I did post a direct comparison on Twitter if you want to see this set of 3 compared to the set of 3 where I use Shyless purple with a dry brush of like Gene Stealer hide on top. It's night and day in terms of just the vibrancy. Not necessarily one better than the other, I'll leave that for you to decide, but the vibrancy is very, very apparent, like the difference in vibrancy. So when working with the warm colours, I would definitely suggest the Wraithbone base coat. But just in general, the Luxian purple is so much better than Stylish purple. Not that that's hard, because Stylish purple is terrible for the most part. But yeah, this new purple, and there's still one more new purple that I haven't used yet. That one might be the one that's called Luxian or Levidon. Either way, so there's still a third purple. There's a new contender I'll need to find some use for to try out. But yeah, the best way to tell is either go back into the original video where I showed off painting the original 3 of the Joker's victims I got, or much easier, just go to Twitter and I posted a comparison picture, or go to the hashtag Batman Miniature Game, you know, hashtag on Twitter. You'll find it there because that doesn't get posted to very much by many people. I did it like last week, so if you want to see the direct comparison and make your own conclusions, I'd say that's your best bet. So he's already been in a battle report. We have Mr. Camera, who again gave me a chance to use the new Bal Red on his cape, the new bright warm red contrast. Super nice. I'm very fond of the Bal Red. I also used the new Black Legion for his suit, which means that the kind of grey edges get picked up better, which is perfect for a tux. Actually really happy with how this one turned out, especially compared to the other thing I painted in the same session, which was Azrael. We'll talk about him last. A little bit of blue on the lens of the camera, a little dot of white to add a shine, a little bit of lead belcher silver, and snakebite leather for the base. Nice miniature, been in a battle report already, so you will already have seen him, but a really good chance to show off that Bal Red again, and also the new black, which is Black Legion compared to the old one, Black Templar. So we'll just get up close there. Model itself, he didn't really get to shine in that battle report, so we'll need to see him again in the future. But I have made a start on Harley and her Harley Thugs for the new Bird of Prey releases. Still got 2 more left, the one with the flamer and the one with the grenade launcher. So I did the same thing for all 3 of these, so we can just look at them in turn as I talk about them. But again, Bal Red for all the reds. Come on Harley, get in focus. There we go. And Black Legion for all the blacks, Guilliman Flesh for the skin tone, Snakebite Leather for the hyena skin. The base is Bal Red and the Usherman Blue. The Dynamite I think I used normal Blood Angels Red for, just to set it apart. You are supposed to paint stars on, again if you're following the official paint job that is, supposed to paint stars on this. I tried, didn't like how it looked, so I just didn't do it on the rest. Went over it and didn't do it. The lights are lead belcher silver with a little bit of rust thrown in, and then Imperial Fist yellow applied a couple of times just to make it bright. Let's go in the order I painted. I painted this one next. So this is just your basic guy with a hockey stick. The official paint job has the hockey stick being like neon pink. Don't have anything that matches up to that, so I used the same purple as the Joker's victims with a little bit of silver for the lines. That's all that's different about him really. Other than that, basically the same. And then the most recent one I finished was the chunky lad himself. The very, very large lad, abnormally large lad, exactly the same colours with the exact same purple used for his hair, because the official paint job he has purple hair, so why not? Trying my best to pick him out. I actually don't like how this one turned out as much. In general, I found the assembly of these ones a little bit more frustrating than recent Night Models releases have been, for whatever reason. Like a lot of them, they have the sticky out bits of resin for you to slot into holes in their bodies and whatnot, like for instance arm to the upper socket up here, but then the moulding will have gone wrong and the bit you're supposed to press it into is completely flat. There's no hole, so you have to kind of improvise. I had to do that with all of these in some small way, so that's the first time in a little while some moulds have been bad from Night Models. I will say also this one has very very telling mould lines, like right down his arm here. Couldn't get rid of it, it seemed too deep. You don't even have to assemble his arm by pressing 2 bits together. So I especially noticed the mould lines on him, unfortunately. In general though, very nice, very colourful. Didn't turn out as bright as I wanted despite using the Bal Red, and I think that's probably because I didn't base... Like before I picked up Wraithbone that I used for these, I'd already painted Harley, I'd already been partway through painting him, and I didn't want to change base coat partway through a themed set of models, so I'm still just using Grey Seer. But with hindsight, I wish I'd used Wraithbone as a base instead, just to brighten up a smidge, to match how colourful the models are. But that brings us to the final model of the video, in which I've rambled. I feel like I've rambled a ton today, I apologise for that. We have the new Azrael, which I've gone backwards and forwards on hating and loving. But in terms of the model itself, the flag he comes with is way too heavy for the bit on which it rests, and the pole. Now you will see that the pole is bending. That is not because of the model, that is because I did that so that it had an anchor point right here on the base where glue could hold it more firmly in place, because it's kind of just, it would drift down there. It's not quite long enough to reach it, although that might just be because of the way I modeled it, I'm not sure. So I did that to give it some extra security to try and hold it in place, but this is very wobbly up here. Its only connection point is right there, and as I say, this is super flimsy, whereas the flag is super heavy comparatively speaking, so sooner or later this is just going to break off and he's going to be holding a pole, I feel. Which is a shame, because the model is really cool, the pose is really cool. I don't know why the flag is as thick as it is. It does not need to be. Or it could have had an extra anchor point where, I don't know, like maybe if you get the billows right on his cape, the cape joins into here or something, just to create a point where it reduces all movement. But either way, it's a neat looking model. I used the new white shade paint that Citadel released at first. I think it's called Soul Blight, or it's Soul something. And I didn't like it. It didn't create enough shadow. It was barely obvious that anything had been applied. So instead I took out Apothecary White, applied that, did a little bit of non-oil as well. And to add the glow on the sword, it's not Briar Queen Chill, I think. There's two new contrast paints which are very ghostly. One of them is called Briar Queen Chill, and everyone is going to remember that name forever just because of how funny it is. It's like Briar Queen Chill. But it's the other one I think I used here, and I also heavily applied that on the inside of the cape here to create like a ghostly aura from the flaming ghost sword. I don't know if that's the Sword of Salvation or the Sword of Sin, but either way, it's one of the two. Kind of reflected it on the back of the flag there as well. I don't know if that's getting picked up, but just in an effort to try and make it look a little bit fancier, because I didn't like how it was turning out. Tried to add a little bit of glow. Still not super happy, honestly. I think my mistake was trying to use that new wash. I think from there it was downhill. But other than that, there's a little bit of Azrael yellow, a little bit of black for his boots, just normal silver paint for the chainmail underneath his armour, and Bal Red for the flag, for his tassels, which were an absolute nightmare to work out how they go in, incidentally. And that's about it. We'll be seeing him on the table at some point soon. Very fancy looking miniature. Very poor choice with the weight of the flag he's holding in the manner in which he is. There needed to be another anchor point to make it more secure. But very cool looking mini. Not super happy with how the paint turned out. Oh, the base incidentally is just Basilicanum Grey for the rocks and Snakebite Leather for the base. So that is going to do it for another Getting Stuff Painted update. I can say for sure that next time you're probably going to see the rest of the Harley Thugs. I'll get those finished so we can see the new Birds of Prey updates on the table once we get around to that. I feel like the final two I've left are actually the hardest two, so we'll see. But I can say for sure also that you will definitely see some painted miniatures from the Dark Souls board game, because I'm in the process of doing those right now. So they'll definitely be an update. You might see them in a video prior to that, but you'll definitely see some of that. As I record this, I believe the new Crisis Protocol releases are happening this week, so we'll probably see some of those included as well. The Winter Guard releases, Malekith, and things like that. I'm not sure when the Batman miniatures are releasing, the ones that opened for pre-order last month, so that might be closer to the end of the month, so I'm not sure they'll arrive in time to be included in another update, but we'll have to wait and see. But I feel like I've rambled way too much. If you do want to check out that comparison for the zombies, you can find my Twitter linked below, and if you want to show me what you've been painting, feel free to do so on Twitter as well. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this encouraged you to get painting through your pile of grey shame, and I'll see you again in 1 to 2 weeks for another update. Until then, ta-ta for now.